to do things a little bit differently on this video. I'm just going to do a start from the hands and knees. It'll mean the class is a little bit shorter, so if you haven't got a full hour, then sometimes if you know you haven't got a full hour, then you don't do anything. So 45 minutes, have a go at it, thereabouts. I always overrun a bit in the end, but thereabouts. If you really like the lie down start, you can flip to one of the other videos and do that, and join in after that if you want to. So it'll give you another sort of 15 minutes of work. What could go wrong there? Right, so hands and knees. Pad out your hands and knees if you want to give yourself a bit more cushioning on the floor. And then when you're ready, you're going to go round in a circle. Just loosening the hips and the wrists. Now bear in mind this is our warm-up, so don't necessarily go to full range. In fact, if you don't even worry about where your full range is, just enjoy moving around. And then bit by bit you can start to move a little bit. You'll naturally move a little bit bigger as you start to loosen up. Check your hands though, see if you can get your fingers flat. Even if you need to put your hands on something a bit more padded, so a cushion or a rolled up towel or just your mat, but try and get your hands flat if you can. Just moving around in those joints. Always remember, if you've got any replacement work in the hip, that you only go to where that joint wants to go, don't force it. And just starting to make that circle a little bit bigger maybe. Don't do too many where you go dizzy. And then we'll do our cat and cow. So hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. Pull the belly button up to the spine, tuck the tailbone under, and let the spine go into a C shape. Round it gently. And then level it out. Pull your shoulders back and down and start to arch your back. And level up again. And remember, it's your warm-up. So we might be a bit creaky to start with. Might not have too much movement to start with, and don't worry about it. Just allow your body to move from tailbone to crown. Try to get the whole spine involved as much as it can though, rather than just working on the bits that like to move. Tuck in, C shape, use your abdominal muscles here, pull your belly button up, pull your pubic bone forward, then level up. Pull your shoulders back and down so you're arching the upper back as well as the lower, as much as you can. Couple more. Do one more of these. And then we're going to do our twisting, so a bit of thread in the needle. So you're going to turn your hand over, you're going to reach through, bending the other elbow as you go. Remember, it's the warm-up, so you might not go very far to start with, it doesn't matter. And then you come through and you reach up. So I'm not even trying to go to full range at the moment. I'm just finding that nice stretch point where it just feels good to move to. So all I'm doing is moving my shoulder down to the floor, bending the other elbow, sending my shoulder up to the ceiling and just gently pressing the chest out, reaching through. Try and resist sitting back on this move. So if you sit back, you're going to get your arm underneath, but you're not getting any shoulder rotation. So you want to bring the shoulder down and then send the shoulder up. And again, bit by bit, the move starts to feel a little bit easier, and then we'll get a little bit bigger. When you've warmed up more and you want to just find the end of your move, as you reach up, if you push down into your other hand and pull your shoulder back, then you'll get that extra bit, as long as it's not painful. So when you reach through, reach your fingers through, bending your other arm. And then you reach up, press down into that supporting arm and pull the shoulder back. Reach through, bending the elbow, and as you reach up, because this is the most difficult bit of the move, I think, push down into your hand, and as you reach up, pull the shoulder back. We'll do one more each side. If I'm moving too quickly and you're going dizzy, slow down a bit. Quite simple. Okay. You need to give your legs a bit of a stretch to come off your knees for a few seconds, then you can. Because we're going to do the front and back of the hips now anyway. So, bring your hands further forward. Come forward, pressing down onto your hands. Now support your upper body and then use your bum muscles to support your hips. Don't drop onto those hips. Push the floor away. Hold it for a few seconds, get a nice stretch in the front of those hips. Then back up and sit back. And again, hip replacements, don't force it. And because it's your warm up, we're only going forward and back. We're not worrying too much about how low we go. You might still have your hips out a little bit in your plank at this stage. Sitting backwards and forwards. So you want to find that point where you've found your full range. And it might take a few goes. As you start to feel that you've loosened up, stay in this plank a little bit longer, pull the shoulders down so the chest is not caved in, and squeeze your butt. And as you sit up and back, move your hips back and see if you can just creep your fingers a smidge forward and lower your chest a little bit. So on the way forward, press into the hands, pull the shoulders back and down and squeeze that butt. Don't drop into the front of those shoulder and hip joints because you're just hanging out of your ligaments here. Hold up, support the joints. And as you sit back, push your hips back and creep your fingers forward. Lower your chest, squeeze your shoulders together just a little bit and lower your chest. Now this plank, I want you to really start to think about activating your back muscles. So we've loosened up the hip and the shoulder sufficiently to find a good plank shape, but then we need to hold it. So it's your back muscles holding you there. And then you're sitting back, because I'm going to add on a few press-ups, only light ones to get the arms working. But we need a good strong core shape before we start to bend the arms. So before we get there, start to feel from your shoulders down to your hips, holding you in that shape. And then back. So on the next one, if you can, come to that 3/4 plank. You might need your hands a little bit closer together and make sure your fingers face forward. And then with your weight still on your hands, bend your elbows a little bit and press them against your sides. Straighten them and sit back. Again, we're warming these arms up to start with, so we're not going for a full bend, we're just breaking at the elbow, just a little dip. Push up and back. If you bend more than your arms can do, what you end up doing is just lowering your legs down. That's a back bend. The back stays neutral, it's the elbows. So you're lowering your face down as much as you're lowering your hips down. And then sit back. And again, bit by bit, you might find you can bend just a little bit more. And push up, but it's got to come from the arms. So we get that sweet spot where we've warmed up, we do our reps, and then we start to feel a little bit tired and we stop before we lose our technique. So abs tight, shoulders down, bend and squeeze the elbows against your body. Push up and back. That squeezing the elbows is important for your body. If you let your elbows drift away from your sides, then you're putting the load in the outside of your wrist. I want you to feel this in the back of your arms. Good. So if your arms disappear out here, when you're doing it, then all the load is in the side of the wrist there. Because your elbow has gone past your wrist. That's not good for your wrists. Get a couple more, if you can. Should be feeling warm now. Body's warmed up because you're working a lot of muscle groups when you do this. Okay, you talked me into it. We'll do one more. That's it. Smashing. And then have a stretch out. Then we're going to do some work for the sides of the body with our child's pose. Child's pose, remember, is quite a challenge. I'll show it you and then I'll give you an alternative. So if you look at it and you think, it's not for my knees today, thank you, there'll be an alternative. But bring your big toes together and take your knees as wide as you comfortably can. You might need a cushion on your feet so that when you sit back, your weight's supported. But if you can sit low enough that you can rest on your feet, that's great. Shoulders back and down. And this is a nice stretch for the legs. If it's too deep a stretch, lift up, and you can always put that cushion there so you're not putting too much load in the knees. But it's a nice stretch for the quads. And it's quite, if you get a lot of lower back pain, as long as you're comfortable in the knees, it's quite nice for lower back because you're not putting so much pressure in the lower back. I wouldn't sit here for long though. And then we're going to do our child's pose. So you're going to reach your arms forward and lower your body down, and you're going to feel a stretch on the inner thigh. Again, we're not necessarily into full range at this stage. I'm still quite high up here, but that feels like it's enough at the moment. And then I like to go over to the side. So you line your nose up with the centre of your knee and reach your arms. And again, I'm still quite high at the moment. I'm just going from side to side. Try and relax your neck. So you're not looking at your hands. You've got a neutral neck. And little bit by little bit, you start to hold that stretch a little bit longer, and you start to find you go a little bit lower. Try and keep your hips square. So the stretch is coming from where your waist and your ribs are, not from moving your hips. If this whole thing is just like, well, it's very interesting to watch, Sharon, but I can't do it. You can sit on your bum, have your legs wherever they're comfortable, and reach over. And you're still getting that stretch from the waist up the side of the body without being any pressure on the knees. That's your alternative. Don't drop forward though. Use your back muscles to keep you upright. Those of you still doing the child's pose, if you want to deepen the stretch, so you're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, staying there a little bit longer, you can deepen the stretch. So as I've come over to my left knee, I've started with my arms either side of my head, and then my right hand sits on top of my left hand. And if I just ease my right hip back slightly, it's a deeper stretch down the right side. And then I come back to centre. And I do the same on the left. So I line my nose up with my knee, arms either side of my head, left hand on right hand, and ease the right hip back slightly. And start to breathe into that side body where you're feeling the stretch. So we're getting closer to the floor with each stretch as our joints get used to the move and our muscles become more pliant. I'm going to do one more on the other side, and that's me done. I think, otherwise I'll be bumping my nose on the floor. Lovely. And then you're going to bring yourself back up, and we're going to do a stretch for the hips. If you want to move around a little bit, if that's kind of kept you in one position for a little bit and you want to do a bit of moving around, then you can. And all I want you to do now is a little bit of ankle and calf stretch. I want you to straighten one leg, keep your weight on your hands, and just push your heel down to the floor until you've got a stretch in your calf. Again, we're only warming up, so we're not forcing to full range. We're just going to where it feels comfortable to start with. So we work quite quickly to start with, just in and out. And then when that starts to feel looser, then we stay in that stretch a little bit longer. Try not to move your whole weight back because there's no stretch then. So your weight stays on your hand and you're pushing your heel down towards the floor. Pushing down, so you're going to have to put some weight in your hands, so when your foot starts to move down, it doesn't pull all your weight back. Nice stretch for the calf, this. And you might find again, as you start to loosen up, you can just tuck your toes under a smidge more and get a deeper stretch in the foot as well. Good stretch for the sort of the big belly part of the calf muscle. You really tuck your toes under and push through. Some weight on your arms. Abdominals engaged enough to stop your back overarching. And then we're going to just stretch out the front of the hip by lifting the leg up. So straighten your leg again. Check on the other side that your knee and hip are lined up, that you haven't pushed your weight over to the outside of your hip, otherwise that will be sore. So weight on your hands, get that knee right in the position where it can support your pelvis on its own, and then you're going to squeeze your bum and pull your heel up. And again, because we're only warming up, those hips might be a little bit tight. We're not worrying about how far the heel lifts at the moment. We're just lifting and lowering. But what I don't want is you trying to lift your leg by arching your back. And you know it, a little telltale giveaway of that is the other arm bends, because you've really arched into your back. So keep your arms straight, suck your belly button to spine, and only lift a comfortable range where you're using your bum, not arching your back. Changing legs whenever you fancy, because your weight's all on one knee and it doesn't want to get sore. When you move to the other leg though, remember it's new for this leg, so it's going to start quite a small lift possibly. And then it gets a little bit higher as the front of the hip starts to release and the bum muscles start to warm up. Changing legs again when you want to, and what I want you to make sure when you lift the leg, so once you've got used to it, make sure your foot, your toes and your knee are pointing down, not rotating out. Remember that we're not peeing up a tree here, we're not rotating the pelvis. So what we're getting here is some strength in the bum muscles and some stretch in the front of the hip. And because we're on our hands and knees while we do it, the rest of the body's working as well, so our warm-up becomes quite active for the rest of the body as well. Changing whenever you want to. Again, looking down between your hands rather than forward, so you're not craning your neck. I'm going to bring this into more balance if you can with our level 2 swimming. So exactly like you've just done with your leg, start with your legs in a comfortable position to support your weight and your hands supporting a lot of your weight. Straighten one leg out, tighten the belly and lengthen the spine, and then pull the foot up. So exactly like you've done before, but this time you're going to push down a little bit on the supporting hands. So whichever leg you've got back, the same side hand. So in my case, my left leg back, my left hand supporting it. Right hand's going to move forward and it's going to lift. Squaring my shoulders like I've squared my hips. Lengthen the spine, use your back muscles to hold you up there. Push down a little bit through your supporting arm. Back to the floor, back in. You might need to wriggle around to support yourself ready for the next side. So move again in my case, the right leg's going to go back. Going to lengthen and engage the abdominals and pull the foot up. Make sure I'm supported, so my right hand is holding more weight. My left hand is going to slide forward and it's going to lift. Try not to overreach. If you overreach, then it's going to pull you out of shape. So you're still keeping your shoulders level, even though you've got your arm off the floor. And try and line up your fingers and your heels as best as you can, because you can't see it. So how it's going on how it feels. Back down and back in. Again, out with the leg, square the hips, lift your heel up, making sure your toes and your knees point down. Lengthen the spine, use your back muscles to hold you. Slide your opposite hand forward and lift it. See if you can line up your heel and your fingers as much as you can with balance. If your belly starts to drop, then you're going to lose your shape and you end up overworking sort of around the lower back and the shoulders. So pull your belly in and lengthen the spine. Do me one more. Each side if you can. Leg first, Sharon. Square up, knee points down, toes point back down, arm out and lift. Push through that supporting arm. Use your back muscles. And do one more. Making it harder than making you do the leg first. And put the leg knee down A little bit of a moving around if you want to. Good. Next time we came off those knees and wrists to you. Yeah, I'm glad you agree. So down on your front, grab a drink on the way if you want to. You're going to lie down on your belly. Excuse the slurping noises. So down you come onto your front. Now we don't want the legs to just lie there and do nothing, because the upper body has to do too much work then. So I want you to tense your legs a little bit, pull your belly button to spine, and make sure your tailbone points down towards the foot end of your mat. Don't let it drift up to the ceiling, because there's too much work in the lower back then. Arms are down by your sides, and I want you to retract your shoulders. So you pull your shoulder blades together and pull your elbows into the centre. Hold it for a couple of seconds and relax. If your neck feels a little bit tight, then a cushion just under your forehead will help support the weight of your head. So get that if you need to. Tense the legs, pull the shoulder blades and the elbows in. Hold it for a second, make sure you're breathing. And release. And all we're doing here is waking up the muscles across the back of the shoulders and the back of the arms. Pull back. And release. It's quite a hard move, even though it's not a very big move, because gravity wants to pull you down. And you're defying gravity, so the weight of your body is multiplied by 3 because of gravity. Good. Pull back, stretch. We're going to bring this into swan dive if it suits you. So you do exactly the same as you just done. Pull the shoulder blades together and the elbows together, stretch the spine, tense your legs, pull your belly button away from the floor slightly, and then use your upper back muscles to just lift your chest slightly off the floor and back down. Some people think swan dive's going to be here, and all I'm doing to do this is push on my belly and make myself feel a bit sick. We want to wake up the upper back muscles with swan dive, so legs are tense, belly's pulled in, shoulders are down, retract them, stretch the spine and use your upper back muscles. And it's just your chest lifting. It doesn't actually really leave the floor, you just take the pressure off it. And back down again. I'm going to try and do another 5. I might go quiet while I do it. So pull back, stretch, tense the legs and lift. If you feel you're pushing on your belly, you come up too far. You're using your lower back too much. You can hold for a little bit longer if you want to. Tense the legs, they're going to help. Squeeze your bum muscles, that's going to help you too. Good. Pull together, lengthen and lift. How many have I done? I think about 3. Good. I'm going to try another 2. Pull together, stretch and lift. I'm going to hold this one just a little bit longer because I'm getting used to it now. I'm going to do one more. Together, stretch, tense the legs, lengthen through the top of your head. And back down, well done. Right, have a quick breather. We're going to do a bit of Superman. No, we know it's called swimming. That's a different school called it Superman. We call it swimming. Arms out in front, shoulders back and down. Now, if you've got any shoulder injuries, it means this is not comfortable for you. You bring your arms down by your sides and you just do the leg swimming. The rest of you though, you can get your arms out. So arms out in front, shoulders back and down. Now tighten your belly a little bit. And then I want you to lift your right arm and your left leg. And then you put them down and you do the same on the other side. Now, quite often I see people do this in the class and I get this business. Control it. I want you to float on the top of the water. If your arm and leg don't want to lift very far, don't force them, because all you're going to do is twist your back. So you use your bum muscle to pull the leg up and your shoulder strength to lift the arm. You can have a bend in the elbow, they don't have to be out dead straight. Bend them so they feel comfortable to lift. But your back does not change shape. So from the top of your head to the tip of your tailbone is a straight line. Legs are tense a little bit again to hold their weight. Shoulders are pulled down. And you're looking at the floor. And this is to build up strength in your back. So you start to hold that lift just a second or two longer, and you're lifting those limbs off the floor. You're not pushing the rest of your body into the floor. Don't hold your breath. Good. We're going to try another couple, but if you've had enough, you stop. So you've got your hand and foot about the same height. If you lift your leg much higher, then you push your weight forward. So hand and foot about the same height off the floor. And then have a rest, and a nice recovery, I think, is to come back up and sit back. You haven't got to go into full child's pose. You can have your bum in the air if you want to. It's just nice to round the lower back after you've been lying flat, I think. What we got next? Now we're going to get into the hips a little bit. So if you lie yourself back down again, fold your arms and just put your head on your arms. Pull your belly button in a little bit, just enough so your back doesn't overarch. And then I want you to just try and kick your bum, one leg at a time, just bring your foot in. And what you're looking for is how much flexibility you've got in these hips. If your hips are very tight, as you start to bring that foot in, then you get a gap appear. Like you got a little gap for your side pocket. Put your hand in. So just gently press down in the front of your hip. And again, if this feels very tight to start with, you're not holding it for very long. You're just getting those muscles to work and then release. Try and get the heel of your foot towards the centre of your buttock. Sometimes with knee issues, your foot can twist sort of into the centre or out to the side, and that's not tracking into your knees very evenly. So right to the centre if you can. So gradually, hopefully, that hip is staying flat to the floor. If you're still getting a little lift every time you bring your foot in, stay on this level and just focus on just keeping the hips as low as you can. But if it's feeling all right, come up to your elbows. Now use these upper back muscles. You're not dropped into your shoulders. Shoulders back and down, chest is lifted. And you've now got a little arch in your back. So now when you kick your foot, it's more demanding to get that foot in. You're going to feel it more. Don't drop. Shoulders back and down, chest lifted. And you're going to find probably one side in particular, it wants to lift. So that's the side you're just working a little bit more on, stretching out the front of the hips. If you're very tight in the hips, what'll start to happen is your knees will go wider. It's all little tricks your body's trying to get the stretch off. If it's too much, if you're really fighting yourself, lie flat again. Kicking that foot in, just stretching. It's a good stretch for the front of the hip, and it's a good work for the hamstrings and the glutes. And when that feels all right, or all right-ish, you can bend both knees. Check they haven't gone wider, so the knees are about hip distance apart. Keep your upper back lifted, and then you're just gently pressing down, and little bit by little bit, again, don't force it, you're just letting those feet come a little bit closer in till you've got the stretch. You can go back to just kicking again, if it all feels like it's starting to seize up, and then have another go. Bit by bit, just stretching out the front of those hips. Keeping your back lifted, and your pelvis down. How are we doing? It's getting too much, lie flat again. Go back to the lying flat. You'll find it's a lot easier than it was when you did it before. So you've just increased that stretch slightly. Single legs, double legs, breathing, chest lifted. Okay, And again, a nice release from that one, I think, is to come back up onto your hands and knees. And you can go back to child's pose if you want to, or you can go round in a circle. Loosen them back up again. Okay, then we'll do our lower back. So we'll start off with a nice stretch. So you're going to lie back down on your front again. Arms out in front, like you do with your Superman, but this time you're going to bring your hands towards you and use your upper body to lift your torso off the floor. So only coming up as high as is right for you. Try not to do all the work with your arms, so your back muscles are lifting you up. So you're just coming up a little bit higher maybe each time. Back flexibility really varies. What you've been doing, how you slept, even how much water you drank is going to make a massive difference to this flexibility. So don't force it. If you feel like you're just doing all the work with your arms, that back's really tight. So go back, stay lower. If it feels alright, use your back muscles to pull you up. And your arms are just supporting you to stop you dropping down again. Staying there a little bit longer when you feel looser. So you want to keep the front of your hip down on the floor. Imagine you've got money in your pocket and you don't want to get anybody get their hands in there. So you keep those pockets flat down. Gradually arching and down again. Listen to that body. If this move feels like it's forced, go lower, stay lower. If you're looking at me thinking, well, I can go further than that, then come further. Don't tell me though, I'll cry. Use your upper back muscles to arch you. And then do one more. If you want to do more, you can. But I know what I've got written down and you don't. Alright, again, if you want a reverse stretch, back up onto those hands and knees. Child's pose if you want. Cat stretch if you like that. Circling around, it doesn't matter which one. Picking the right one for you. Right, then we're going to get the front working, because there's no point in having all the back muscles engaged if the front aren't, because you're going to be pulled into a weird sway back kind of pose. So back down on your front again. Fold your arms, and now I want you to suck your belly button to your spine. So this is really boring telly because there's nothing to see. But underneath you, you can feel those muscles tighten. Hold them tight for a few seconds and let them go. Suck in. Now, there shouldn't be anything to see. If I use my back, you see me hunch my shoulders, or you see my bum kind of go up every time I think I'm tight in the front. So all I want it to be is underneath you, just a slither of light might appear at your belly button, if that, but you can just feel that tensing. And I want you to think about pulling your belly button to spine and drawing the pelvic floor up. You just scrunching that centre in just a smidge, and then letting it go. Scrunch it in a sec, scrunch, and let it go. All we're doing at this stage is making sure you carry on, but I want you to just make sure that you can feel the front pulling in, not hunching your shoulders and not sticking your butt out, because we're going to come up to plank. I mean, it all needs to start from that centre. So now, if that's feeling okay, come up onto your elbows. Use your upper back muscles to keep the upper back supported and not drop in. Now pull your belly button to spine and release it. And again, there's a slither of light possibly appear. If you overdo it and work the different muscle groups, then you're going to hunch your back to get it to work. Sucking your belly in. If you can now, as you suck your belly button in, see if you can pull your hip bones off the front of the mat. Pull yourself up slightly and down. And what I want you to feel as you pull in and lift your hip bones, your lower back straightens out slightly. So it's not pushing your hip bones up and sticking your bum in the air with an arched back. It's pulling the front up and tucking the tailbone under. Don't push on your knees. So you pull your belly button in, you pull the front of your hips away from the floor and push your tailbone down. And bit by bit, see if you can come up a bit higher. So you pull your belly in, tuck your tailbone under and lift your hips up. Keep pulling the front in tight. If you do this and just lift your hips without engaging the front, it looks like that. And you go up with your back doing all the work, and the front abdominal muscles are just too relaxed, they're not supporting you. So you've got to start coming from underneath. So you pull up, keep lifting, and back down. And if you're suddenly feeling very warm, you're doing it properly, because there's a lot of muscles working there. So you're pulling yourself into slight posterior tilt and then pushing up and down. We can come to full low plank if you want to. So you tuck under like you just did, lift your hips like you just did, and keep lifting until your hips are about level with your knees. You might need to adjust your knees so your weight's correct. Tuck your toes, straighten your right leg, push your heel away, straighten your left leg. Full low plank. Hold it for a few seconds. Use your back muscles and your front muscles to hold you up there. Put your knees down, back to the floor. How was that? Have another go. Pull your belly in, pull the front of your hips away from the floor, lengthen the lower back, lift those hips until they're about level with your knees, thereabouts. Make sure your weight's distributed properly. Tuck your toes, straighten your right leg, straighten your left leg, and feel all the muscles that start have to switch on when you go through the different shapes. And back down. Can you do two more? If you can't, don't worry about it. If you can, great. Pull in, lift, tuck the toes, straighten the legs. Hold it for a breath if you can. Back down. Regroup, pull in, lift up. Make sure that lower back's not not overarched, because you'll hold all the weight there. Tuck the toes, straighten the legs. For 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and down. Well done. Sit back into child's pose, get your breath back. Good. Right, bit of side work now, so you can lie on your side. Grab a drink on the way. How are we doing for time? How are we doing? All right. Right. So lying on your side, get your back neutral. Can you see me all right? I think you can. Make sure your back's neutral so you're not rounding your spine. So pull your shoulders back and down. Have your knees bent, and you can have one in front of the other if you want to. Now the difference when you lie on your side is your weight is not level. You're pushing down underneath you. That's where your weight is. So I need you to pull your waist up a little bit so your hips are square. Then you bring your arm out in front, roll the shoulder back. You're going to lift that arm up and feel the work in the back of your shoulder. Stretch your spine, make sure your legs feel in the right place to allow you to twist, and then move the shoulder back, but not the hip. Untwist when you're ready. Stack your shoulders, look forward, and push your hand down so it passes your eye line and pushes to the floor. Now, quick warning on this, because you're on your own. If you twist and something pinches, stop, come out the twist. You're pinching either a disc or a nerve, neither of which likes being pinched. So come out of it, reset the legs, have another go. But if you still feel that pinching, stop today before the pinch. Otherwise, you can twist. Send the shoulder down to the floor, send the hand down towards the floor, but not the hips. So it's the legs and hips tell you how far you can reach. If I just let my legs lift, I could go all the way to the floor, but there's no twist now. Pointless. Back to the ceiling and push your hand down to the floor. Keep resetting the shoulders. Remember, we tend to overreach and damage our rotator cuff, so we're pulling the shoulder back, pulling the waist up, reach up and twist. Now, the good thing with chest opener is I can't make it any more difficult than it already is. This is the shape. So if you want to challenge the move, then you stay there a little bit longer. But you don't just hang in those ligaments. You reach out and you make the legs nice and heavy. Then you come back up and you lower. Check that you're not sticking your belly forward, because again, that's going to compact the lower back. So pull the belly in, pull the waist in, reach up, Stretch the spine and then twist. Legs nice and heavy. Untwist. See, some people actually say if you've got heavy legs it's a disadvantage. It's not. Heavy legs really help balance you. So reach up, stretch and twist. And untwist and lower and relax the shoulders. Now we're going to get into the legs, so we can do some good work for the side of the legs from here. So all I want you to do is keep your bottom leg bent and straighten your top leg. And try and get your heel about level with your bum. So the leg's right in the centre of that hip joint. Put your hand around your hip as if you're striking a pose. And what you're doing with this bit of the move is making sure you're not just seesawing on that hip joint. So your hips are square, waist is pulled in. So when you lift that foot up, you're using it by using the muscles in the side of the bum and the side of the leg, not just bringing your hip closer to your ribs. And down again. So it's called abduction. And this is really good for using your bum muscles. Hopefully you can feel it and building up strength in the side of the leg. Keep the hip down. It doesn't travel towards your ribs as you lift and lower the leg. You see it sometimes people, especially if you're quite bendy, it's very difficult to stop this kind of seesawing action on the hip joint. Do your best and put a bit more weight in the bottom leg if you're struggling. And you can stay with this. If you've had any work done on this hip or on this knee, it's a very good strengthener for the side of the leg, so stay with this if you want. Otherwise, lift that top leg to about hip height, maybe a bit higher, and then you're going to move forward and back. But you're moving forward and back from the hip, not from the lower back. So I don't want your belly pushing out and pulling in. I want your tailbone to stay still, so draw up, draw the waist in, and move from the hip joint. So you're using your top quads and your glutes and your hamstrings to move this leg. It doesn't have to be a big move, but you're building up stability in the pelvis and outer thigh strength and bum strength, just moving that leg. So stay with this if it feels the right amount of work for you, or come to full scissors where you straighten both legs. Now you've got to lift that top leg up like you just did, but you've got to do some work from the bottom leg now. So you're going to have to tense it and lift it just slightly. If you don't, when you try and move it, it just drags on the floor. So lift it a little bit now. Try and line your feet up so you're not pushing all your weight on this hip joint. I see this sometimes in the class, people in this sort of shape where they've pushed all the weight on the hip joint and then they move the legs and it hurts the hip. So stretch out a little bit, pull your waist in, lift that top leg to hip height, top hand on the floor if you need to for balance, and then you kick the legs. If you're feeling a lot of pressure on that bottom hip, try stretching out and just maybe lower your bottom leg a little bit, see if that helps. If it doesn't and it's still hurting, bend that bottom leg to down, just move the top leg. There's always another day. There's no expiry date on scissors, you can always have another go. But try and pull those legs apart. Pull the waist in, look forward. Top hand can be on the floor if you want to, or just on that hip. I tend to keep mine around the hip just to remind you that it's not going to move. And I can feel that little crease in the hip joint then when I move my leg forward. Scissoring, trying to get that gap a little bit bigger. Just be careful that you don't use this bottom arm too much for stability, otherwise you'll hurt your rotator cuff. Stretch through your head instead. How are we doing? We love these, Sharon. We'll have another 22. You can, I'm doing another 2. And when you've done, bend your legs. That's enough for me. I did circuits last night, my legs are really tired today, so that's going to be enough for me, but you do more if you want. Next one I'm going to do to finish this side is a bit of side plank. Now, side plank, really demanding on the shoulder. So if you've got any shoulder injury, you've got 2 options. You can just stay static, where you just basically hold the shape and pull the rib cage up. So you're building up strength around without moving the weight around. So that's one option. Or you can come up to knees, bring your arms up and sway. So you're still using these side muscles without any loading the shoulder. So that's another option. So either of those, if you've got a shoulder injury, because I don't want to make that worse. But otherwise, bottom leg bent, top leg straight. Now you can be on your elbow and do a low plank, or you can be on your hand and do a high plank, and that's up to what feels better for you. For me, I find this suits me better because I haven't got very long arms anyway, but whatever suits you. Bottom leg is bent in a position where it can give you a bit of support but not cramp. So find that position. Top leg, inside edge of your foot against the floor and about level with your hip. If you're sitting with your foot up, then this top hip is too far back, and when you come up, you're going to come up that way. So make sure you've got the knee and the toes facing the same way as your nose, forwards, shoulders stacked. This top hand then lifts up, and you use your legs and your hand to push down slightly as you push your hip up and reach. And you can reach up to the ceiling, or you can reach to the wall and push, ease yourself down. Don't drop, ease down. So you lift up, you push down a little bit, you pull up, lift and reach up to the ceiling or overhead if you want to. Make sure that you are coming up, not forward. So you're not pushing the front of those hips. It's from underneath. So up. If you don't need this support of this bottom leg, it moves out of the way, and you can have both legs straight, one in front of the other, or one on top of the other. One on top of the other is harder to balance. So again, square the hips, square the shoulders, and push yourself up and down. Look forward as you lift. Try one foot on top of the other if you want. It's easy with shoes on because you've got a ridge along the side of your foot. But see how you get on. A bit more balance. Pull yourself up. Really pull that hip off the floor. And try 2 more, but you do as many as is right for you. Shouldn't try and do a Pilates video the day after circuits. And then we've got the other side. So flip over, grab a drink on the way. Chest opener first. So lie yourself down, roll your shoulders back and down, and have your legs comfortable. And remember, underneath needs more support, so you've got to pull your waist muscles a bit tighter, and then arm out in front. Roll the shoulder back, stack the shoulders, and lift the arm. Stretch and twist, being aware of any pinching and stopping if there is any. Otherwise, send the shoulder down, make the legs nice and heavy. Back to the ceiling, stack the shoulders, and push your hand to the floor. Keep pulling that waist up. It's important that for this move and the ones to come, because if you let the waist drop, then this top hip is too close to the ribs. You're going to feel it. So push it away, pull the waist up, lift the arm, and twist. Nice heavy legs. And twist. So with all the flexibility moves, you stay there for as long as feels good for you. I don't want you to be hanging there though. Those of you more bendy, don't just hang in that joint and think, hey, I'm good at this. It's active, you're reaching, pressing down with the legs, so you're not just hanging in those joints. I know you bendy lot. And again, reach up. And we'll make this the last one, I think, on this side. And then we've got the leg to do. So we'll start with the abduction. So straighten the top leg and stack the hips, pull the waist in and lift and lower the top leg. And again, just like with the warm-up we did at first, it's not a massive move. You're not going to hold it for very long. I'm not expecting huge recruitments of muscles, but I want you to get your technique correct. So you're not seesawing on that hip joint, because there's no work for my leg here. It's all coming from my lower back. Keep the hips still, so the only way you're going to get that leg up And lifted is using your bum and using the outer thigh. So really good if you're having any problems with your knees or any sciatica or hip issues. Stay with this, or keep that leg lifted and move it forward and back. And again, not massive range to start with, because what we're making sure is that we are functioning from this hip. So you can feel that little crease appear when you kick forward, and the bums tighten as you move back. If you work from your lower back, then you get this kind of move going on. And even though it's not a big move, it's very effective. You can feel it in your bum. And you're going to feel the bottom leg as well, that's going to be working. But if you want the harder option, straighten both legs and line your feet up so you're not pushing down on your bottom hip. Look forward, engage your back muscles. Top hand can be on the floor if you need it. Or again, I keep it around the hip just to remind the hip that it's going to stay where it was. And then you scissor. So keep pushing through the soles of your feet and through the top of your head. Try not to rely completely on this hip joint to stabilise you, otherwise it will get really sore. Use the legs. Try and get a little bit more gap maybe. So finding your full range. If you do feel that bottom hip's bruised, check your position, maybe it was that, so make sure the hips are square and you're pushing through your feet and you haven't lifted the top leg too high and you haven't let the top leg drop. So we've got that nice gap between your feet, they're going to slide on those railway lines. If it's still feeling just too bruised, then keep it still and go back to the top leg. Because you worked it when you were lying on your other side, so it's not like it's not had some work already. Getting soft in the old age, look. I don't know. And when you've had enough, you bend your legs. Have a little rest, give that bum a rub, because we've got the joy of side plank. So, decide if you're going to do it. If you're not going to do it, you hold a static pose to build up strength in the shoulder, that's your option, or up onto your knees and sway like you did on the other side, that's your other option. If you are going to do plank, make sure you've got enough room on your mat. Bottom leg bent, top leg straight, line the side of that ankle up with the side of the hip, hips are square, shoulders are square, elbow or hand supports the shoulder, and when you're ready, up. Pull up from underneath and down. Really, you're going to have to push down in these joints, in these limbs, and lift. And your arm can go up to the ceiling, or it can come over by your ear and get that stretch down the top side of your body. Up to you. If you want the full version, both legs straight. One in front of the other is easier, so we'll start there. Doesn't matter which one's at the front, whichever suits you. Look forward, stack your hips and lift. And down. Make sure you are lifting the side of your hip up, not pushing up through the front of your hips. Good. Lift yourself. And if you want to challenge your balance, hard if you haven't got shoes on though, one foot on top of the other. Get yourself in a nice straight line and then up. Good. Push yourself up. Really lift your hips off the floor. Ground down through your hand. Good. Couple more if you can. One more. Push up. And down. Good job. Phewie. Right, onto your back. Over you go. Nearly done. Alright, just a little bit of work lying on your back and then we leave it there. So, starting with your knees bent and the feet on the floor. I want you to lengthen out along your mat now. Try not to push back. Stretch out. So when you're up and about moving, you will have a nice long spine, not a hunched into itself spot. Arms are down by your side, feet flat on the floor. Lift your right foot just slightly off the floor and down, and the same on your left. This isn't a big muscle exercise. This is our foundation move for the supine work. So make sure we keep a straight line down the front and we're creasing at the hip joint in order to pick the feet up. So the pelvis is not moving. So stabilise this pelvis. we get a lot of movement around these bones in the pelvis, and that's where we get a lot of lower back, hip and knee problems from. So keep it still. Imagine a corset around your middle, holding those bones locked into shape so you can bend at the hip. If it feels okay, lift the leg to 90 degrees and down. So you're having to recruit more leg muscle to lift that leg up. Don't bend in the middle. So you're using your thigh muscles now to lift your foot up. Okay, on your next one, lift the leg and leave it there and bring the opposite arm up. Tighten the centre and stretch the body. Kick the leg out. Your legs are about level with each other. Hold it there. Pull the opposite arm back. Pull the shoulder down and make sure the ribs are level. Hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Back to the start position with the bent leg and back to the floor. Reset. Try again on the other side. So lift the foot and keep lifting the leg to 90 degrees. Float the arm up. Lengthen the spine. Push forward with the leg. Pull back with the arm. Square the ribs. 5, 4. Use your leg muscles. 3, 2, 1. In and down. Now, when you're doing this move, you're going to repeat it again on the other side. Don't let your back arch or your belly push out. Lengthen. Use your leg muscles. Pull your shoulder down. Hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In and down. One more. Lift. Out. Hold those legs. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In and down. Good. Hip lifts. I'll be nice because you've worked hard, or I think we have. We're going to do hip lifts with both feet on the floor. So heels about underneath the knee. Nothing underneath your head. Arms down by your sides. You're going to push your hips up and down. And again, to start with, hips might be a bit tight, so it might take a little bit of getting. If you've brought your feet too close, you can't get off the floor. If your feet are too far away, you're going to feel like you're going to cramp. So find that midpoint. You're ideally looking for your lower leg to be vertical. So up and down. Check your knees aren't going wider. Stay at hip distance apart. And if you can, get to that bridge. Little bit of pressure in the middle of your feet, little bit of pressure in the middle of your shoulders to hold you. Let your arms lift up and come back slowly. Lift those hips a little bit higher if you can. Arms back to the ceiling, push down. This pelvis needs to stay neutral. Sometimes we tend to either drop back and open up the joints a bit too much, or we tilt forward and close the joints a bit too much. So try and stay just in the middle. So push up. Float the arms. Squeeze your bum a little bit. Lift your hips. Don't just stick your belly out. Lift your hips. Arms to the ceiling. Push down. I want another 3 if you can. If you've suddenly run out of mat, you need to put a little bit more pressure in the middle of your shoulders when you're up in that bridge. So you don't let yourself be pushed up. Float. See if you can just use your bum muscles to lift your hips a smidge higher. Float the arms back. And down. Use these glutes. 2 more. I think it's 2 more. Might be 3 more. Up. Float. I could do with somebody here keeping a count for me. I forget. Which means we tend to do more reps because I always add 1 on just in case. Come on, 2 more. You can. Up. Arms back. Watch those knees don't drift. Keep them facing forward. Arms up. 1 more, come on. Lift. Slowly with those arms, don't rush. Grind down through your feet a little bit and through your shoulders. Lift these hips. Back to the ceiling. And down, good. Bring your knees into your chest, hug them in. As long as it's appropriate for your back, so there's no osteoporosis or slip discs, you can curl your shoulders off the floor. Bring your nose towards your knees and roll back down again. Nice stretch for the back. Suck your belly in as you curl over. Hand underneath your head if your neck feels unsupported. Reset the spine, come up, reset. You're not going to come up a long way because the shape we're in. And then have a good stretch out, lengthen the body. Remember, this is where we build up our smugness glow. So we are incredibly smug that we have managed to do an exercise class. Yay! Stretch out. Bring your arms bent down by your sides, hands underneath you, push yourself up to sitting. Fidget around till you feel comfortable, roll your shoulders back and a little bit of twisting. So move the shoulder and look behind you. Come back and the same the other side. Now try and keep your hips still as you do this. So you're moving the shoulders, not the hips. Try not to rely too much on that hand behind you. It's just giving you a little bit of leverage to twist, so you're not relying on it to lean on. Just giving that little bit of rotation. Keep your chest lifted. Have your legs bent comfortably for you. Round your spine. Nice stretch for the lower back this. So don't worry about how far over you come. Just feel that taking the pressure out of the lower back. And then when you're ready, pull yourself up, stack your spine and open your arms out. And come forward when you're ready. So you're trying to lift the weight out of your hips and rest it on your legs. And then you're resetting that weight. So using all the muscles down your back, not just the lower back. And then opening your arms out. Do one more. You might be able to have your legs a little bit straighter and still come forward. See how your neck feels? Pull yourself up. Reset the spine from tailbone to crown and open out. Right, I think we'll leave it there today. Well done. Good bit of work. Hope you're all keeping well if I haven't seen you in classes. I'll speak to you soon. Let me know how you're getting on. Drop me a WhatsApp if you want. I'd like to hear from you all. Ta-ra.